My TBR has a theme, and it's magic realism books about books. Hey, how are you? Today's October 30th, and I have finally figured out what I want to read in November. Again, it's very ambitious, but I'm pretty excited because November is both novella and nonfiction reading month within my book Discord, and I think within the online bookish community in general. So there's a lot of novellas or like shorter novels, like under 250 pages, that have been sitting on my TBR for ages. So I'm excited to tell you about some of them, and hopefully while I talk about them, that will inspire me to actually read them. Fingers crossed. Now, before we get into the TBR, I just want to talk about what I'm currently reading. I actually currently only have one read. I know, I'm shocked. Listen, I'm shocked. I am resisting starting something. Okay, that's a lie. I've kind of started something that I want to finish tomorrow, but it's a small book, we don't need to talk about it. Really, my only current read is Neil Gaiman's Trigger Warning, just because it's a series of short stories. I've been carrying this around in my backpack and reading it like when we go on little walks or hikes and sit by the river and stuff. This is just kind of my pick it up if you have 5 or 10 minutes book right now, which is why I'm not that far in. And also some of the stories have been published before, and I've read some of them before because I used to follow Neil Gaiman's work very closely. So this isn't like the most compelling thing in the world for me right now, but it's definitely a nice companion, and it's got like aesthetically it's really beautiful, and it's just, it smells good, and it's just got this like nice vibe. It does smell really good. Okay, so let's talk about novellas that I want to read. So this book is about a cat that convinces a bookworm introvert to go and rescue books that belong to negligent owners. Which just sounds really fun. Like it's kind of got this like road trippy vibe, a little bit of a magic realism vibe. Through their travels to strange dimensions, the cat and Rintaro meet a businessman who leaves his books to perish on a bookshelf. Okay, guilty. A scholar who cuts pages into snippets to encourage speed reading. Don't love that. And a publishing drone who cares only about bestsellers. Also don't love that. Their adventures culminate in one final fantastic challenge. The Last Labyrinth leads Rintaro down a realm where a certain soul hangs in the balance. Is it his soul? I don't know, it's kind of implied. Books, first love, fantasy, and an unusual friendship with a talking cat. What more do you want? Look at how pretty this book is. Like, at the front, and then it continues to be a cat, so I can just show you. I don't want to crack the spine, but the bookstore I got it from gives free bookmarks that look like this, and it's really beautiful. It's called Argo. It's in downtown Montreal. And it's a really lovely little bookstore. This is the next novella I really want to finish, or at least start. I've owned this copy since probably before the pandemic. I can't tell you how long before, but it's been a couple years. I read Saramago's Blindness several years ago, and I really liked it, and I have a few other of his books that I've been meaning to get to, and I keep thinking, oh, it's going to be really good, but also kind of hard to read. But this book is just so intriguing. So let me read you a part of the blurb so you know why I'm so intrigued by it. On the first day of the new year, no one dies. This, of course, causes consternation among politicians, religious leaders, morticians, and doctors. Among the general public, however, there's initially celebrations. Flags are hung out on balconies, people dance in the streets. They have achieved the great goal of humanity, eternal life. Then, reality hits home. Families are left to care for the permanently dying, life insurance policies become meaningless, and funeral parlors are reduced to arranging burials for pet dogs, cats, hamsters, and parrots. Death sits in her chilly apartment, where she lives alone with scythe and filing cabinets, and contemplates her experiment. What if no one ever died again? What if she, Death with a small d, became human and fell in love? So magic realism, experimental, I'm really excited about it. The one thing I don't like about Saramago's style, and why I've been putting this off, There's no paragraph breaks. Like, look at this. There's literally no paragraph breaks in these 2 pages that I kind of opened at random. Some pages have a few. Ooh, a receipt just fell out. Can we find out when I got this? This was bought at the Toronto International Airport in 2010. That was not by me. I bought this at a thrift shop. I bought this at a thrift store, but someone else bought this at an airport 12 years ago, so that's exciting. I bought it for $8.50 at a thrift shop. Anyway, I really enjoyed his writing. I'll probably follow along with the audiobook just because I find long paragraphs very challenging. My eyes don't, it's gonna sound so silly because I'm a big reader, but my eyes really don't like it when a page is just one paragraph. They get lost. And I start trying to skim things and then nothing makes sense and I don't get anything out of the book. This happened to me with Crime and Punishment a lot, and I really enjoyed the book once I started listening to the audiobook and actually having someone read it for me. So this is pretty short, only about 236 pages, so I'm hoping I can finally embark on this journey. There's also just something about like reading about death and magic realism in November when it's like dark and it hasn't snowed yet and it's just kind of gloomy. I don't know, this feels like tonally, this feels like a perfect book for the season, so I really hope to get to it. So the next book, this is like bridging on whether it's a novella or not, is going to be The Discomfort of Evening. I have heard that this book is very dark and disturbing. So it's a bestseller in the Netherlands, so it's originally by a Dutch writer. And it just looks so dark. And again, that just seems like November is the perfect time to read like dark and gloomy and kind of twisted novels, especially Scandinavian novels. And this just has such like a dark premise. Like the main character lives with her devout farming family in rural Netherlands. One winter's day, her older brother joins an ice skating trip. Resentful at being left alone, she makes a perverse plea to God that he never return. As grief overwhelms the farm, she succumbs to a vortex of increasingly disturbing fantasies, watching her family disintegrate into a darkness that threatens to derail them all. Like, it just sounds messed up. I love it. What does that say about me? I don't know. I'm really excited for this book. I really don't know much about it other than the fact that people are like, this is really creepy. And that is more than enough to get me to read a book. So that's on the list. I'm not sure if this counts as a novella, but it's been on my TBR for this year and I still haven't gotten around to it because it's a bit of a comfort author. So it's Alice Munro's The Moons of Jupiter, and Alice Munro tends to write these collections of short stories that kind of have a running theme. I really enjoyed 2 of her other books, Who Do You Think You Are and Runaway, or Runaways. I'm really excited for The Moons of Jupiter. I also think I have this beautiful edition. It's apparently from the 80s and quite rare. I also got it thrifted. It has all these highlights, which is kind of exciting. And I've just found Alice Munro's writing super comforting. Like, this is probably going to be a before bed book. She writes about really sad women, and I love reading about sad women. What does the book say here? These 12 stories center on women, on their joys, fears, loves, and awakenings, and on what Munro calls the pain of human contact. From the opening story exploring family relations to the poignant title story that closes the collection, this is vintage Munro. And there's also some introductions and stuff. I'm just really excited to read this. It just feels like I don't know, modern classic-y. Like, just the vibes from Munro are immaculate. They're like small town Ontario depressing vibes, and I'm here for it. And this is also quite short, though the font is really small, so it's probably going to take me quite a while. But it's only about 220 pages. Yeah, and it smells so good. It's a book from the 80s, and someone read it on October 27th. This wasn't me. So I guess end of October, beginning November is when this book is supposed to be read, this specific copy. Okay, that's actually kind of hype. I did not realize that. I was checking the front page to see how much I paid for it. It was probably $1, honestly. If it doesn't have a price on it. A lot of thrift shops here will have like dollar books. The ones that have been there forever and that no one wants to buy. And I feel like this is one of them. But I don't know, I'm excited for it. It looks very like, it looks sentimental. And I can get behind sentimental. The next book is one that I've been scared of starting because I'm scared I won't like it. It's Last Night in Montreal by Emily St. John Mandel. So I am the biggest fan ever of Station 11 and Sea of Tranquility. I think those are masterpieces. I didn't like Glass Hotel, we don't need to talk about it, but I think those two books are absolute masterpieces, and I love the way Emily St. John Mandel writes. And now that I've lived in Montreal for a few years, I really want to read this, and I don't really know much about it. All it says on the back is that it's a story of love, amnesia, compulsive travel, the depths and the limits of family bonds and obsession. Mystery, promise, foreboding, lots of just keywords, but no plot, just vibes. I'm okay with no plot, just vibes. It's so pretty, and my edition, the first page is torn off. Again, this is the fun part about getting thrifted books. Like, why is the front page missing? That's ominous. I don't think it's annotated or anything. So I'm just worried I'm not gonna like it because I like her so much that it's like scary to read new things because I don't want them to, they're not gonna taint my love for some of her other works. I'm going in with really high expectations. I think that's the problem. I'm going in with really high expectations for this book, and I just hope it doesn't suck. I just really hope this doesn't suck. I'm like scared, but again, it's not very long, so if it does, it's not gonna be torture. It's only about 240 pages. I'm really stretching the definition of novella here. But it's a slim little guy. It's a thin little book. Yeah, I hope I love it. Another novella, sort of, I think it's 200 something pages, that I really want to read is The Marrow Thieves. My understanding of this, I'm not going to look it up on my phone, let's see what I remember. My understanding of this is that it's a post-apocalyptic world where indigenous people of North America are hunted down for their bone marrow because there's some kind of disease that can only be cured with their bone marrow. And the thing about bone marrow extraction is it's very painful. So I believe it's written by an indigenous author to, as an allegory for basically persecution and fetishization of indigenous people in North America. And I think this is going to be really interesting. It's a YA fantasy, well, a YA kind of like sci-fi dystopian. I don't read a lot of young adults, but I've really enjoyed dystopian fiction that explores real social issues, which I guess is what it's supposed to do, but it tends to fall flat. Well, I've heard really good things about this one. Let's find out what it's actually about. In case I'm wrong. Goodreads is loading. In a futuristic world ravaged by global warming, people have lost the ability to dream, and the dreamlessness has led to widespread madness. The only people still able to dream are North America's indigenous people, and it is their marrow that holds the cure for the rest of the world. But getting the marrow and dreams means death for the unwilling donors. Driven to flight, a 15-year-old and his companions struggle for survival, attempt to reunite with loved ones, and take refuge from the recruiters, who seek them out to bring them to marrow-stealing factories. Sounds really disturbing. Honestly, it sounds really, really disturbing. But it sounds fascinating. I'm really interested in reading this. I've really been taking the time to read more and more diversely ever since I started reading more. And reading Indigenous voices among that has been really important to me. And so far, I've really liked a lot of the books that I've read. And I have really high hopes for this one. I've been saving it for like the right time, and it feels like the right time. I'm excited. And then the last novella, and I think this is really a novella, is by Lemony Snicket. aka the writer of A Series of Unfortunate Events. He has a book called Poison for Breakfast that my library has the audiobook of this, and I think it's only like 4 hours, like it's quite short. And I think the premise of this is that someone sits down to have breakfast and realizes that his breakfast has been poisoned. So he goes around the village to the sources of his various breakfast foods to find out where the poison has come from. Something like that. Let's compare my memory to the actual synopsis. This true story, as true as Lemony Snicket himself, begins with a puzzling note under his door. You had poison for breakfast. Following a winding trail of clues to solve the mystery of his own demise, Snicket takes us on a thought-provoking tour of his predilections. The proper way to prepare an egg, a perplexing idea called simsum, and the sublime pleasure of swimming in open water, and much else. It's described as a classic in the making that, in great tradition of modern fables like The Little Prince, that is a high comparison. That is setting the standard very high. Will delight readers of all ages. I can get behind being delighted as a reader of many ages. No, I'm actually super excited for this. I think it's going to be really fun. Hi, if this feels like a change of scene, slightly framing maybe, it's because my camera died and I had to charge it. So we're back. Good, okay. I know I spoke about this book already in my October TBR, and I do really still want to read it. I'm gotten around to it, but I think this might be my next nonfiction that I pick up. And I'm really excited for it, and I'm extra excited because I think I'm going to annotate it. So I don't like annotating books, I don't like writing in books, I don't like highlighting stuff. They're kind of sacred to me, but I recently got some really cool annotation tools. I got these tabs that look really beautiful, and then I got some fully transparent sticky notes. They're completely transparent, so I could just stick them on the book, write stuff, and then if I want to remove stuff. I've been really wanting to annotate some nonfiction books because I find those especially have, like, you know, pages that are particularly interesting and really highlight the reason I picked up the book. So I'm very excited to start using these guys. And then you need to write in pencil on them, and I have this really cool no-face pencil. I'm very like Miyazaki today. Got my Princess Mononoke shirt and got my no-face pencil, so that's cool. The other nonfiction that I really want to read sometime soon is Killers of the Flower Moon. I've heard this is incredible. So it's about the Osage murders and the birth of the FBI. So it's about the murders that prompted the creation of the FBI. In the 1920s, the richest people per capita in the world were members of the Osage Nation in Oklahoma. After oil was discovered beneath their land, they rode in chauffeured cars and lived in mansions. Then, one by one, they began to be killed. Molly Burkhart watched as her family became a prime target. Her relatives were shot and poisoned. Other Osage were also dying under mysterious circumstances, and many of those who investigated the crimes were themselves murdered. As the death toll rose, the case was taken up by the newly created FBI and its young, secretive director, J. Edgar Hoover. Struggling to crack the mystery, Hoover turned to a former Texas Ranger named Tom White, who put together the undercover team, including a Native American agent. They infiltrated this last remnant of the Wild West, and together with the Osage, began to expose one of the most chilling conspiracies in American history. Yeah, I like classic true crime. I'm kind of getting in Cold Blood vibes a little bit in terms of this being very, like, classic and informative. I'm really excited because the book has, like, photos, which are pretty neat. So it's like they're every few pages, and it looks just like really well documented. I've heard amazing things about it. I'm just self-conscious now. I don't know if I'm saying Osage properly. It might be Osage. Osage. I don't know. Please pardon my ignorance. I should have checked. But yeah, I'm really excited for this. And then speaking of American conspiracies, the last nonfiction on my TBR For this month is Empire of Pain. So the story of the Sackler family and how they basically created the opioid crisis in North America through basically OxyContin. And this sounds incredible. I've heard very, very good things about the book itself, the way it's written. My library has it as an audiobook. I'm really excited to listen to it. Yeah, I just really want to read all 3 of these nonfictions super soon because they're so interesting. They're so, I guess, the kind of nonfiction that I really like is exactly this sort of like human depravity that goes under the radar, or is disguised as something good, or little things that actually unveil a big conspiracy. That's like my jam. So I think you can kind of get a common theme. I like dark history, basically. I mean, at this point, who doesn't? Dark history is so interesting and so informative and really provides, I think, a lot of perspective that doesn't necessarily get talked about that much in sort of like mainstream history narratives. So yeah, I'm really excited for the nonfiction picks I have for this month. And then the last sort of picks I have for this month, I actually have quite a long list of options because they're either library holds or leftover from my October TBR. So I'm not going to list all of them, just the ones that I'm most excited about because they have the most like magic realism and vibes going on, and I just feel like they're going to be really good for November. So this next one is the book that won the Women's Prize this year. And last year was Piranesi, which was amazing. And I've looked at some of the other winners of the Women's Prize, and they tend to be really good. So I have very high hopes for this book. And it's a magical realism book. It's a bit of a chunk. Not a huge, huge chunk, and it's like really floppy. And this is exactly the kind of font that I really like and the kind of typography I really like spaced out, and there's a couple of like funky font bits. I don't know. Yeah, it's got good flop. Like, look at that. I really hope that renders on audio. It just goes wobble wobble. Let me read you what this is about. 1 year after the death of his beloved musician father, 13-year-old Benny O begins to hear voices. The voices belong to the things in his house: a sneaker, a broken Christmas ornament. And while Benny doesn't understand what these things are saying, he can sense their emotional tone. When his mother develops a hoarding problem, the voices grow more clamorous. At first, Benny tries to ignore them, but soon the voices follow him outside the house, driving him to seek refuge in a public library, where objects are well behaved and know to speak in whispers. There he discovers a strange new world. He falls in love with a mesmerizing street artist who uses the library as her performance space. He meets a homeless philosopher poet who encourages him to ask important questions and find his own voice among the many. And he meets his very own book. Book is capitalized. A talking thing, who narrates Benny's life and teaches him to listen to the things that truly matter. And then the quote that's highlighted is, "Books can help. We can show you things, shift your realities, and widen your world. But the work of waking up is up to you." I mean, a lot of my favorite themes here. I am predicting this is going to be a 5-star read. I really hope I won't be disappointed. I picked this up a couple of months ago when my friends were in town, and I dragged them to another Montreal independent bookshop called Paragraph. It's one of my favorite ones. It's right by McGill University. And they have this really cute little Shakespeare logo. It's a really, really lovely, well-curated independent first-hand bookshop. So I don't buy books firsthand very often, but I don't know, something has really drawn me to this one, and this might be my most anticipated book. No, I can't rank them. I have a lot of highly anticipated books on my TBR this month, but the vibes are immaculate, is what I'm saying. And then on that note, there is another book that was shortlisted for the Women's Prize that I think the vibes are going to be really cool, and that's Build Your House Around My Body. I'm just going to grab my phone because otherwise I will butcher the synopsis of this. Oh, it's time for my Be Real. Okay. Guess I'm being extra real. Filming my November TBR for YouTube. There you go, that's my Be Real. That's my setup. A very funky setup. Okay, right, what was I doing? Build your house around my body. So this book is also magic realism, and it's been on my radar mostly because I think the title is really cool and I think the cover looks nice. And sometimes that's how I pick books. But also the description sounds cool, but I have seen some low ratings saying that the book's a little confusing. But I'm very intrigued. So let me tell you about this book. Two young women go missing decades apart. Both are fearless, both are lost, and both will have their revenge. So one of them goes missing in 1986 and another one in 2011. The 1986 one is a teenage daughter of a wealthy Vietnamese family. She loses her way in an abandoned rubber plantation while fleeing her angry father and is forever changed. In the 2011, a young and happy Vietnamese American woman disappears from her new home in Saigon without a trace. So the fates of these two women are linked, bound together by past generations, by ghosts, by ancestors, by the history of possessed bodies and possessed lands. That sounds so good. Alongside them, we meet a young boy who is sent to a boarding school for the Mitsi children of French expats, just before Vietnam declared its independence from colonial rule. Two Frenchmen who are trying to start a business with the Vietnam War on the horizon, and the employees of the Saigon Spirit Eradication Company, who find themselves investigating strange occurrences in a farmhouse on the edge of the forest. Each new character and timeline brings us one step closer to understanding what binds them all. That's like one of my favorite things. I love books where we follow multiple people and then it all comes together. Like, I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it. I love it so much. But listen to this last bit. Part puzzle, part revenge tale, part ghost story. This book takes us from colonial mansions to ramshackle zoos, from sweaty nightclubs to the jostling seats of motorbikes, from expat flats to sizzling back alley street carts. Spanning more than 50 years of Vietnamese history and barreling towards an unforgettable conclusion, this is a time-traveling, heart-pounding, border-crossing fever dream of a novel that will haunt you long after the last page. That sounds so good. Like that. I'm hearing magic realism, I'm hearing family saga, I'm hearing a little bit of horror, the vibes. The vibes are immaculate. I'm very excited for this. And I think we're just going with like Asian literature for the vibes, because the last book that I wanted to talk about today, it's not the last book on my TBR, but I'm trying to make this video not 30 books long, which is a really big challenge because that's how I do my TBRs, and then I only like half succeed them. But it's fine. I like being excited about books, and I like knowing that there's a bunch of books I still want to read. So the last one is Celeste Ng's newest book, and I definitely think I'll get to this one this month because my hold from the library has come through. And it just looks so good. I think I didn't let myself like her two earlier books as much as I actually did like them, if that makes sense. I think I felt like they were too mainstream and sappy and like over the top, but now looking back, I really enjoyed both Little Fires Everywhere and Everything I Never Told You. I really enjoyed those like exploration of family dynamics, and I'm really, really excited to see what she's going to do with this one, because this is a dystopian book, but it's like a soft dystopian book as far as I can tell, so the dystopia is an element, but it's not the crux of the problem. So again, I've been really enjoying reading you the descriptions of these books. Let me know if that's something you like. I think it's fun. I like reading to you, but if you hate it, I also want to know. So let's find out what this book is about. 12-year-old Bird Gardner lives a quiet existence with his loving but broken father, a former linguist who now shelves books in a university library. My TBR has a theme, and it's magic realism books about books. Bird knows not to ask too many questions, stand out too much, or stray too far. For a decade, Their lives have been governed by laws written to preserve American culture in the wake of years of economic instability and violence. Apocalypse! We love apocalypse novels. Or at least the fall of America, which sounds great. To keep the peace and restore prosperity, the authorities are now allowed to relocate children of dissidents, especially those of Asian origin, and libraries have been forced to remove books seen as unpatriotic, including the works of Bird's mother, Margaret, a Chinese-American poet who left the family when he was 9 years old. We have book censorship. We have the fall of an empire. What more is there to love? And we have a mysterious disappeared parent. I am in the palm of Celeste's hand right now. Bird has grown up disavowing his mother and her poems. He doesn't know her work or what happened to her, and he knows he shouldn't wonder. But when he receives a mysterious letter containing only a cryptic drawing, he is pulled into a quest to find her. His journey will take him back to the many folk tales she poured into his head as a kid. Yes. Through the ranks of an underground network of librarians, double yes, into the lives of the children who have been taken, awesome, and finally to New York City, where a new act of defiance may be the beginning of much-needed change. It's an old story made new of the ways supposedly civilized communities can ignore the most searing injustice. It's a story about the power and limitations of art to create change, the lessons and legacies we pass on to our children, and how any of us can survive a broken world with our hearts intact. It sounds so good. It just... I am goosebumping. I am goosebumping thinking about this book. I am so excited for it. I think November is going to be an amazing reading month. And you might notice that I actually had a lot of, I actually physically own a lot of the books. And I actually have, the bookshelf that you see here are all my read books. I have another bookshelf of unread books that's about 2.5 shelves. And a really big goal I have is to make that shelf smaller and smaller. So I'm trying to more consciously curate my TBR to reflect the books I actually own. So hopefully you'll keep me accountable. Right now I've been averaging reading about like 2 books off my physical TBR per month. I'm hoping to increase that because they smell good, they feel nice. The problem for me is I really like reading on my e-reader because I really like reading lying down on my side. And with my e-reader, I just need like one hand to like flip the pages, while with a book, it's like awkward and weird and I get like pain in my shoulders. But I also just really like the feeling of a physical book. I've been really enjoying using my e-reader sometimes and then flipping through the physical book sometimes, or playing around with audiobooks if I have the physical book, that kind of thing. So I'll try to do that a little more in the upcoming months. So yeah, let me know if you've read any of these, if any of them are skips, or if any of them are absolutely amazing, or if you're really looking forward to any of these. I know I am. They sound so cool. There's gonna be themes, there's gonna be vibes. I cannot wait. Like I said, it's October 30th and I'm ready to plunge into my November TBR. Thanks so much for watching, I really appreciate it, and stay tuned for a recap of my October reading. Alright, bye.